welcome to Vantage this week, a show where we recap the highlights of the week gone by. This week, there was big news from India. It is putting 10,000 extra troops on the border, the India-China border. China is easily India's biggest security threat at the moment, so New Delhi is shoring up its defences. And speaking of defences, there was an intelligence breach in Europe. German generals were heard discussing the Ukraine war and how Germany plans to aggravate the situation. That's how Russia sees it. A situation is also developing in the Caribbean nation of Haiti, where a gang leader called Barbecue has warned of genocide. Meanwhile, to the Haiti's north, the US is gearing up for a rematch no one really wanted. It's officially Joe Biden versus Donald Trump again in the presidential election as Nikki Haley has thrown in the towel. All this and more coming up. Let's get started. In Europe, a military leak has caused a political storm. At the receiving end is Germany. It has been hacked. Its blueprint for the Ukraine war has been leaked, and this has put Berlin in a spot. You see, Germany was anyway seen as a reluctant partner. Its role in the war has been questioned throughout in the Ukraine war. And with this leak, its position has become even more difficult. Its allies are raising questions and wondering if Germany can be trusted anymore. So what is this leak? And what does it reveal about Germany? Also, how did these top secret details come out? They leaked because German officials broke some basic rules. They discussed war plans on an unsecured phone line. These were German military officials. They made a grave blunder, and it appears that Russia intercepted this call. It managed to make an audio recording. Over the weekend, Russia Today leaked this recording, and now it's being shared on social media. We have a clip. Listen to this.
Aber zum Beispiel, wie das angebaut aussieht, am Tornado, was kann der Taurus, wie wird er eingesetzt? Aber natürlich spukt bei ihm immer noch im Hinterkopf.
So what were the Germans discussing? Well, they were talking about arming Ukraine, about the possibility of giving it some powerful missiles like the Taurus. The Taurus is a cruise missile, one of the best that Germany has. The missile is usually fired through a fighter jet. It travels almost at the speed of sound. That's over 1,000 kilometers per hour. It can strike targets some 500 kilometers away. The Taurus can fly low at an altitude of just 35 meters, so it's extremely tough for a radar to catch it. Now, Kiev has been asking for this missile for a long time, but the German chancellor has been reluctant.
A weapon which isn't even the most powerful one. A HIMARS rocket launcher achieves a lot more than a Taurus, but which has a 500-kilometer range and which, if used wrongly, can reach a concrete target somewhere in Moscow.
He doesn't sound keen to give the Taurus. But could that stand change? I ask because Ukraine is increasingly looking more vulnerable, low on weapons and morale. America's latest aid package has been stuck for months, and Europe has been trying to step up to fill the gap left by the Americans. So Olaf Scholz may be forced to rethink, and that was the backdrop of this phone conversation. German generals were discussing war scenarios. What if Ukraine had the Taurus missile? Which targets would they hit? And they came up with some ideas. One of the potential targets was the Kerch Bridge. It connects Russia to Crimea. This is what the German generals were discussing on an unsecured phone line. Now that conversation has been leaked and Moscow is up in arms. Today, Russia summoned the German ambassador and registered an official protest. Russia says Germany wants to enter this war and claims that this audio leak is proof.
Here we have to find out whether the Bundeswehr is doing this on its own initiative. Then the question is, how controllable is the Bundeswehr? And how much does Scholz control the situation? Or is it part of German government policy of Germany? Both are very bad. Both once again emphasize the direct involvement of the countries of the collective West in the conflict around Ukraine.
Russia says Olaf Scholz has lost control of his forces. They're making plans without his knowledge, and Moscow's statement was carefully crafted. It clearly defines the Russian red lines. It tells Berlin that arming Ukraine with long-range missiles would amount to direct intervention in the war. If they give the missiles to Ukraine, it means Germany is entering the war. So what is Germany's response? It's in damage control mode. It accuses Russia of information warfare.
What has been reported there is a very serious matter, and therefore this will be investigated very carefully, very intensively and very quickly. That's necessary.
The incident is clearly more than just the interception and the publication of a conversation within the Air Force. It is part of an information war that Putin is waging. There is no doubt about that.
This is a messy situation for Olaf Scholz. He took power in 2021. Since then, he has been on the back foot. Under his leadership, Germany's economy has been pushed towards a recession. His coalition partners are unhappy with him. Differences over policy have led to divisions. Plus, Scholz has been locking horns with Europe, mostly over the military aid to Ukraine. Now, this leak only makes his life more difficult. It shows Germany as the weak link in the Western alliance and Scholz on shaky ground. Russia is capitalizing on this weakness. On Friday, a foreign tourist in India put up a video on Instagram. She was talking about her travels in India and she had bruises on her face. She had been gang raped by 7 men during her trip. This incident happened in the state of Jharkhand. Her husband, who was with her, was beaten up badly. The story led to a lot of outrage and condemnation. The authorities swung into action. 3 of the accused have been caught. 4 others are on the run. Now, this is not the first such incident in the country. Chances are it won't be the last. Every 18 minutes, a woman is raped in India. This is data from the government of India. And this incident has sparked a fierce debate on social media about women's safety and women tourists. Our next report has more.
5 years, 63 countries. 170,000 kilometers. This couple began their world tour half a decade ago. They boarded their bikes and never looked back. But their journey took a horrible turn last week. The woman and her husband were on a biking trip in India. They were traveling from West Bengal to Nepal. On their way, they stopped in Jharkhand. It was around 5 p.m., so they decided to spend the night there. They set up a temporary camp and were preparing to go to bed. That's when 7 men entered their tent. They beat the couple, they robbed them, they raped the woman, and threatened to kill the duo. At around 11 p.m., the couple flagged down a patrol van. The patrolling team couldn't understand what they said, but they looked visibly injured, so the van took them for treatment. That's when the couple told the doctors about the rape, prompting the police to jump into action. 3 of those men have been arrested and 4 are still on the run. The woman is a dual national. The Brazilian embassy was informed and so was the Spanish embassy, as the couple used Spanish passports to enter India. Over the weekend, the 28-year-old took to social media. She put up a video on her Instagram page. It was in Spanish. She talked about her ordeal. She showed the bruises on her face and how glad she was to be alive. Her husband posted a similar video. The videos are not on their page anymore, but it sparked a fierce debate. Is India safe for women tourists? Over the weekend, Indians and foreigners shared their stories. They all had one thing in common: how they faced sexual harassment, or have been a witness to it. One such post got a response from the chief of India's National Commission for Women. Palki Sharma commented on the post. She questioned why the person didn't report it and asked them to not defame the whole country. But was the tweet defaming India? Or are these heinous incidents doing that? In 2023, a Korean vlogger was sexually harassed in Rajasthan. That same year, a Dutch tourist was molested and stabbed in Goa. In 2018, a British tourist was raped in Goa too. In 2016, an American woman alleged she was gang raped in a hotel in the national capital. In 2013, a Swiss tourist was gang raped by 6 men. They were later sentenced to life in prison. And it's not just foreign tourists. Indian women have faced the brunt as well. Every day, an average of 90 rapes are recorded. In 2013, the country amended its rape law. It broadened the definition. It brought in new punishments for sexual assault and stalking. Yet, it hasn't changed much on the ground. This latest incident could lead to more policing, more awareness, stronger condemnation, and more conversation both on social media and off it. But the fact of the matter is, every 18 minutes, a woman is raped in India. we will need much more than conversation and half-baked measures to deal with the issue.
We start with India versus China. Two neighbors caught in a bitter border standoff, which is now in its fourth year and becoming more tense. All signs point towards rising hostility. India is mobilizing more troops, 10,000 of them. They were stationed on the western border of India, presumably to guard against the threat from Pakistan. These troops are now being redeployed. They'll be stationed along the border with China. So an additional 10,000 troops at the LAC. Beijing has taken notice, and today it has issued a warning. China says India's increased deployments won't ease tensions.
India's strengthened military deployment in the China-Indian border area is not conducive to the efforts made by China and India to ease the border situation, nor is it conducive to the maintenance of peace and tranquility in the border area.
So China is trying to paint India as the aggressor, conveniently glossing over how this began. In this equation, India is not the aggressor. India's moves are not offensive. They're meant for defense. They're a reaction to China's expansionism. India has deployed soldiers because diplomacy is not working. These tensions erupted in 2020, and since then, Indian and Chinese generals have met 21 times. So 21 military-level dialogues and no solution. China has neither withdrawn troops nor shown any inclination to do so. Where does that leave India? With no option but to recalibrate its deployments, to strengthen its defenses and to prepare for the next Chinese provocation, because the provocation will keep coming. So how is India protecting its borders? It's taking a new approach. Increasing troop deployments is just one part of it. India has also built a new fighting command. It's like a combined fighting force with its own artillery and air support. Their assignment is clear-cut, guarding a specific part of the border with China. A 532-kilometer stretch, it separates Tibet from two Indian states, Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh. But why this particular stretch? It's not clear. New Delhi remains tight-lipped as it practices a strategy of deterrence. As China lines up troops, India responds in kind, matching the scale and numbers. As China ramps up border infrastructure, India does the same. And when you connect these dots, you see the big picture. India is digging in for the long term. Because diplomacy can deliver only so much, especially with a sly customer like China. They only respect the language of strength, and their words do not match their actions. Since 2020, the main sticking points remain unresolved, especially these two friction points, Depsang Plains and Demchok. These are areas in eastern Ladakh. They remain a key source of tension. And China is making it worse by setting up blockades in areas like Kugrang Nala, Gogra Post, and Charding Nala. Fresh clashes have been reported as recently as November 2022, when the Chinese showed up at the Atari post. Indian forces pushed them back. More than 15 Chinese troops are said to have been injured on that day, and this happened even as military talks for disengagement were on. Clearly, China has not respected the process, and this has compelled India to seek stronger deterrence, which brings us to the question, what is the current state of deployment? Now, we don't really have the answer to that, because neither China nor India has shared the specifics. There are just reports, and they're often conflicting. One report says India has 50,000 troops on the China border. Another says there are well over 60,000 troops. Either way, India is adding more troops, and this indicates that the situation is precarious. Also, look at the statements of top leaders. S. Jaishankar is India's External Affairs Minister. He spoke about the border situation in January. He said, and I'm quoting, "Unless there is a firm solution, the forces will remain face to face." Yesterday, he gave an interview and he hinted that the border situation still remains a problem. The Indian Army has the same view. The chief of the Northern Command described it thus. He said the border situation, and I'm quoting, "The situation is stable but not normal." And this was said 2 months ago. So it makes sense for India to be on its guard, to keep up its defenses and even add more troops. Now let me ask you what may sound like a strange question. Have you ever wondered what happens to your hair after a haircut? The strands that have been cut, what happens to them? They're trash for you. But for hair traders, it's gold, especially in India. Because there's massive demand overseas for Indian human hair. And guess who is among the biggest buyers? China. In fact, they're so keen on this supply that they have started or resorted to smuggling. Human hair from India, that's what they're smuggling. This week, Indian officials cracked a big case. They found hair worth over $1 billion being smuggled, mostly to China. India's border forces have been seizing a lot of these shipments lately. Our next report tells you why this has become a hair-raising issue.
On the face of it, it may sound amusing, but India's border forces are confronting a hairy situation. This isn't mere wordplay, it's the reality. There's widespread smuggling of human hair out of India. India's Enforcement Directorate has been probing a new case. This is the agency tasked with investigating money laundering cases. They've exposed a smuggling operation. It involves shipping human hair out of the country illegally. Well, hair may seem like a waste when you go to your barber for a haircut, but overseas, it's worth a lot of money. The operation uncovered by the ED involved smuggling of human hair worth $1 billion. And guess who's the biggest buyer? China, followed by other countries like Bangladesh, Myanmar and Vietnam. The smuggling often happens through land routes running through India's neighbouring countries. Human hair export is a big business. Going by one claim, India accounts for 80% of the world's hair exports. That's a big number, which is also the reason behind the deeper scrutiny. A simple Google search exposes the magnitude of the problem. Most of these stories have one thing in common. The bulk of the demand comes from China. So why do the Chinese want to get their hands on Indian hair? Well, there are a few compelling reasons. There's an epidemic of hair loss in China. There are many Chinese who are losing their hair at a very young age. And it's not just the men. In 2020, over 250 million Chinese were diagnosed with hair loss, and out of this, 88 million were women. This has led to an uptick in the demand for wigs and hair extensions, and manufacturers prefer Indian hair. They describe it as lightweight, lustrous, wavy and bouncy. In fact, India is famous for its supply of Remy hair. That's the type with the cuticles still all in one piece. They are believed to be of the finest quality. Where do they come from? Usually from a single source. Many traders gather these from temples in southern India, where women are known to shave their heads for religious reasons. But like in any business, the hair exports too suffer from a demand and supply problem. The supply for human hair is hard to come by, so the Chinese have resorted to smuggling. Last year, it was revealed the Chinese buyers were hiring local agents who bought human hair from Indian suppliers and smuggled them out of the country. India is now cracking down hard on this problem. The illegal supply is also a loss for the exchequer, as the smugglers end up avoiding any export tax. The problem is a messy one, and it may take a while to untangle.
When you hear the word scam, what do you think of? These days, cryptocurrency perhaps, the fall of FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, or maybe Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes. Our more seasoned viewers may remember Bernie Madoff, WorldCom, or the biggest scandal of all, Enron. But massive scams are not exclusive to the US. As in all other spheres, Asia is catching up. Today, a trial began in Vietnam in a $12.5 billion scam, a real estate scam involving a woman called Truong My Lan. She's a 67-year-old real estate tycoon who began selling cosmetics at the age of 16 and went on to control 90% of a bank and a real estate empire. Today, she was brought before a court in Vietnam in what's being called their trial of the century. Here's our report.
Vietnamese state-run television is being kind. They've decided to blur the face of Truong My Lan, even though she's quite famous in the country. After all, she's one of the richest people there. She made her fortune in the world of real estate. And now she's on trial. Why? Because her fortune was apparently built on a million lies. Trong My Lan stands accused of orchestrating one of, if not the biggest scam in Vietnam's history. The scam amounts to almost $12.5 billion, more than FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, more than double Malaysia's 1MDB scam. The scandal is one of the biggest in all of Asia, and if proven guilty, the tycoon risks getting the death penalty. So let's look at how this happened. Lan founded the VTP Group real estate company in 1991. She was among a host of developers building high-end commercial and residential properties in Vietnam. As her company kept growing, she needed more money to fund new projects. She often got this in the form of loans from banks. One bank in particular stands out, the Saigon Joint Stock Commercial Bank. SCB, as it's known, disbursed loans worth $43 billion to Lan and her associates. This was between 2012 and 2022. 2012 was the year the bank was formed. The same year, Lan became a shareholder there. Now, you may wonder, how can a bank give that much money to one party, even if they're a shareholder? After all, the bank gives loans using customer deposits, so there must have been some checks and balances, right? Well, there usually are, but not when one party owns 90% of the bank. It turns out Lan had a network of 27 individuals who owned shares in the bank on her behalf. It allowed her to control the bank and control how it spent its money. A lot of it went into buying bonds from Lan's company, after which it was embezzled. To keep all this under wraps, Lan allegedly paid the people who were supposed to keep watch. Standing trial with her today are 15 State Bank of Vietnam officials, 3 government inspectors, and a former official at the State Audit Office. Together, they had managed to keep Vietnam's government in the dark for almost 10 years, until 2022. That was when Lan was finally arrested. But even then, Vietnamese authorities apparently didn't know about the scale of the scam. They arrested her for some thousands of dollars worth of embezzlement. But that changed when they found a diary belonging to Lan's personal driver. It reportedly contained meticulous notes about the cash he had ferried, amounting to $4.4 billion. Just think about that. There was a man who had spent years driving billions of dollars in cash around the streets of Ho Chi Minh City. The Vietnamese investigators were shocked, and that's when they widened their probe, bringing us to where we are today. The trial is underway. It's expected to last till April. Almost 90% of the people who are involved have been charged in the scam, and some may get the death penalty. Vietnam will hope this trial sends a message. The country has been struggling with corruption for years now, so a harsh sentence in a high-profile case like this may have a ripple effect. But for now, this scam is a stain on Vietnam's reputation, and Hanoi will need to do a lot to restore confidence in the country.
In the United States, it was Super Tuesday, a big day in the election calendar. 15 states and 1 U.S. territory vote on a single day. That's why it's called Super Tuesday. Now, Super Tuesday sets the tempo for the battle ahead. And it's claimed a victim today. That's Nikki Haley. She's out of the presidential race officially. Nikki Haley has suspended her campaign. Interestingly, she did not endorse Donald Trump when she did it. Instead, she asked him to earn her trust.
I have always been a conservative Republican and always supported the Republican nominee. But on this question, as she did on so many others, Margaret Thatcher provided some good advice when she said, quote, "Never just follow the crowd. Always make up your own mind." It is now up to Donald Trump to earn the votes of those in our party and beyond it who did not support him. And I hope he does that. At its best, politics is about bringing people into your cause, not turning them away. And our conservative cause badly needs more people.
Nikki Haley launched her campaign last year. It was right after Donald Trump. The first few months were a slump. She was polling in single digits. Then the first debate happened. She started gaining traction. She did well in these debates. She beat the likes of Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy. Haley was a moderate candidate, no radical views, sticking to status quo. It appealed to plenty of Republicans, especially those who did not support Donald Trump. They rallied behind her. Then donors took notice. They backed her campaign. Basically, she was seen as an alternative to Donald Trump, but not by the voters. She kept losing in the primaries. 24 primaries have been held so far. Nikki Haley won just 2 of them. She lost even in her home state, South Carolina. Soon her luck with the donors too ran out. America has something called super PACs, political action committees. They get campaign funds. These super PACs left Haley's campaign, so she lost funding. There were doubts about how long she could continue. Today, she's put those doubts to rest. Nikki Haley is out, which leaves the Republicans with just Donald Trump. He's the only Republican candidate now, and that means he will go against Joe Biden.
Well, thank you very much. They call it Super Tuesday for a reason. This is a big one. And they tell me, the pundits and otherwise, that there's never been one like this. There's never been anything so conclusive. This was an amazing night, an amazing day. It's been an incredible period of time in our country's history.
It's a 2020 rematch, Trump versus Biden. It may not be the choice that America wanted, but it's the choice that they're getting. For Trump, this is just the first hurdle he's crossed. He has no opponents. But does he have the money? Because elections are an expensive spectacle. And in the US, billions are spent on campaigning. If you can't raise the money, you're out. Now you may ask, why will Trump not have the money? The former president is, after all, a billionaire. He enjoys strong Republican support, so raising money should not be a problem for him. But it is, because Donald Trump faces 91 felony counts. He's been indicted in 4 cases. 2024 is not a good year for him. Trump was ordered to pay $355 million by a New York court. If you add interests, that's $454 million. Then there's an $83 million defamation case, plus the bills of his lawyers. So Trump is burning money, and he's doing it every day. By some accounts, he owes $500 million in just court penalties. That can't be good for anyone, no matter how rich. It's especially bad for a candidate in an election year. So Donald Trump needs funding, which explains why he met Elon Musk a few days ago. The meeting took place in Florida. It was over the weekend. We don't know the exact details, but all reports mention one thing. Trump wants Musk to fund his campaign. Will the Tesla CEO do it? It's not clear yet. Musk is one of the richest people in the world. His net worth is around $200 billion. So he does have the means to do it. Plus, Elon Musk does not like Joe Biden. He has spoken against the US president in the past. He says defeating Biden is a priority. But does that make him a Trump ally? Well, not yet. Neither Musk nor Trump have commented on this. But you never know with these two men. Surprises are their forte. Right now, Biden has the financial advantage. He is the incumbent. He's getting most of the funding. Biden raised $42 million in January. Reports suggest his re-election campaign has around $130 million in the bank. So he does have an advantage, at least for now. But if Musk joins the Trump campaign, he joins hands with Trump, it could more than level the playing field. Our next story is from Haiti. The Caribbean island nation is in chaos. For days, Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, has been under attack. A gang leader called Barbecue is cooking up a storm there. He has directed various gangs to attack the government, Haiti's international airport, and even jails. Yesterday, 2 prisons were besieged. The guards eventually fled, and about 4,000 inmates were let loose. Haiti's government has declared a state of emergency. They're trying to bring order back to Port-au-Prince. But the gangs they face control about 80% of the capital. Our next report has the details.
The entire law and order mechanism seems to have broken down in Haiti. The country looks to be in the middle of a coup led by armed gangs. They say they want one thing: the ouster of Prime Minister Ariel Henry.
We are demanding that the police and the military take responsibility and arrest Ariel Henry. Men with weapons are not your enemy. Arrest Ariel Henry and you will see how these weapons are not to cause any harm. They are the symbol of our freedom.
That was gang leader Jimmy Cherizier, who also goes by the name Barbecue. He was once an elite police officer, and now he's become a spokesperson for the gangs of Haiti. The gangs seem to have come together. They're coordinating their attacks on the capital, Port-au-Prince. They've been besieging police stations, targeting Haiti's international airport. And yesterday, they conducted their boldest attack yet. They attacked 2 prisons and set the inmates free. One prison was in the capital, the National Penitentiary. The other jail was on the outskirts of Port-au-Prince. Combined, the prisons held about 5,000 prisoners. Most of them are now free. The attack on the National Penitentiary left some prisoners dead and many injured.
Oh, a lot of shooting, a lot of people died, a lot of deaths around the prison, all around the prison.
I received a bullet here and another a little higher up. I was hit yesterday at 9 p.m. I'm suffering.
About 100 chose to stay behind in the prison, but almost 4,000 escaped from this national penitentiary. It prompted the Haitian government to declare a state of emergency yesterday. The emergency will last till Tuesday. There's a curfew in place. The police are trying to bring back some order. They've reached out to the Haitian military for help, but the situation remains precarious. Now, you may wonder, what has led to this state of affairs? Why do the gangs want to get rid of Henry? Ariel Henry is both the Prime Minister and acting President of Haiti. The problem is, he was unelected. He was appointed Prime Minister by the former President, Jovenel Moïse. Moïse was assassinated 2 days after this appointment. Henry was supposed to hold elections, but he's been delaying them. And this is the justification the gangs are using for their violence. There's also another reason why the gangs are acting up. Last Thursday, Henry went to Kenya. He signed a deal with Kenyan President William Ruto. It will allow Kenya to send police officers to Haiti as the head of a multinational force. This force has been tasked by the UN to bring order to Haiti. And of course, this will affect the gangs. These gangs have overrun Port-au-Prince. They control 80% of the Haitian capital. The Kenya-led force will push back against them. To avoid this, the gangs are unleashing their fury. They hope to prevent Henry from bringing back law and order. Now it seems to have become a race between the Haitian PM and these gangs to see who can oust the other first.
Now let's turn to the world of tech. A new storm is brewing. A fight has begun between the world's second richest man, Elon Musk, and a company he helped found, OpenAI. Musk fired the first salvo a week ago. Last Thursday, he filed a lawsuit in San Francisco. He accused OpenAI of betraying its foundational mission. Musk says OpenAI was supposed to help humanity. Instead, it has become a profit-making subsidiary of Microsoft. Musk blames the other founders of OpenAI for this. He says, and I'm quoting, "They set the founding agreement afloat." He's referring to CEO Sam Altman and OpenAI's president, Greg Brockman. So Musk is suing both these men and OpenAI itself. He's suing the company too. Elon Musk claims that he wants to put the open back in OpenAI. As in, he wants the technology to be open source, meaning anyone can legally use the code and go about building their own AI models. In his typical style, Musk has been taking digs at OpenAI via memes and posts. He calls it closed AI, just to drive the message home. But Sam Altman and his gang are not amused. They decided to hit back yesterday through a blog post. They've released a number of emails dated between 2015 and 2018. These emails reveal a different story. It seems Elon Musk is not upset about OpenAI's profits, but he's angry that he won't get a share of them. Turns out that Musk himself wanted OpenAI to become a for-profit firm. The blog post says, and I'm quoting, in late 2017, we and Elon decided the next step for the mission was to create a for-profit entity. Elon wanted majority equity, initial board control, and to be CEO. In the middle of these discussions, he withheld funding. That sounds like arm twisting. OpenAI is effectively saying that Elon Musk was trying to blackmail them. He was withholding funding and asking to become CEO. When that failed, he suggested merging OpenAI with Tesla, which is quite hypocritical, considering that he is crying foul about OpenAI working with Microsoft now. Now, some of you may agree with Musk's view. You may think that since he was OpenAI's biggest donor, he had the first rights to all its profits. But the blog post disputes that too. Here's what it says, and I'm quoting again. In total, the non-profit has raised less than $45 million from Elon and more than $90 million from other donors. They don't get into the split. So Musk still could have been the biggest donor, but he did not seem to have the controlling share, which may explain why he eventually walked off. Elon Musk left OpenAI in early 2018 to build his own AI startup within Tesla. He basically founded an OpenAI competitor and used Tesla to bankroll it, which was a smart move, or it would have been had it worked out. Today, Elon Musk has an artificial intelligence firm called xAI. It has created a language model called Grok. But it's not really considered path-breaking. So Musk could be hoping his lawsuit helps his new company too. Because remember, if OpenAI is forced to become open source, Musk can use their technology to boost his own for-profit company. What is the likelihood of any of this happening? Probably low, because of the emails OpenAI has just leaked. One is particularly damning. OpenAI's former chief scientist wrote this: as we get closer to building AI, it will make sense to start being less open. The open in OpenAI means that everyone should benefit from the fruits of AI after its birth, but it's totally okay not to share the science. And Musk responded to it. He said, yup. That proves that either Elon Musk doesn't really read emails, or he knew that the open part wouldn't last. It makes his lawsuit seem disingenuous. Whether courts see it that way is another way, though. We'll have to wait and see how this latest tech feud plays out. Do you remember what happened in 2008? The world witnessed a global economic crisis. Banking collapsed. Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. Merrill Lynch, AIG, Royal Bank of Scotland, they were about to meet the same fate, but the crisis did not just affect banks. The ramifications were felt across industries, including fashion. Legacy companies filed for bankruptcy. Big brands saw drops in revenue. But do you know who managed to thrive? A new cohort of fashion companies, fast fashion brands. You see, in times of crisis, people do not stop shopping. They just buy more affordable items, like cheap, poorly made clothes. Mass-produced at breakneck speed. So fast fashion made the cut. In 2008, its market share expanded. Companies like Boohoo and ASOS were rolling in profits. We saw this during another crisis as well, the pandemic, when fast fashion mogul Shein made a huge leap. It made $2.5 billion from online sales in 2019, just before the pandemic. By 2020, the number had jumped to $8.4 billion, which is a 236% increase. And fast fashion is still soaring. With cost of living crises and growing unemployment, people are lapping up affordable clothes. The global market for fast fashion is worth $106 billion. $106 billion. By 2027, it is expected to reach $185 billion. But France wants to slow down fast fashion. It has proposed a new bill, where fast fashion brands will be subject to penalties up to 50% of a garment's selling price. Why? Because France claims that an average brand renews its collection 4 times a year, but fast fashion brands offer thousands of products every day. Shein, for example, offers more than 7,000 new garment models a day. France says this incites excessive spending and creates unnecessary pollution. So it wants to penalize the brands to offset their environmental impact. And France is not wrong. Textile production generates 10% of global carbon emissions, yet 80 billion pieces of new clothing are purchased every year the world over. And what happens to so many clothes? Every 3 in 5 of these items end up in landfills. So why don't consumers reduce the burden? A, because buyers alone cannot change an entire industry, and B, they can't give up on easy, fast, cheap clothes, it seems. So why don't companies change their ways? Because fashion is full of hollow claims about using recycled material or paying fair wages to workers. Most of these promises are made by brands themselves. So their progress is self-reported. And brands go largely unchecked. If they don't meet targets, they don't face punishment. And they do not reform themselves. But change seems to be in the air, and France is not alone here. Over the past few years, governments seem to be waking up to this. A raft of new regulatory proposals and laws have emerged. Last year, the EU banned destruction of unsold clothing, the European Union. The year before, it demanded that companies make long-lasting clothes. And if caught misleading consumers about greenwashing, they would face penalties. Meanwhile, Norway and Germany have due diligence acts. They demand that companies address negative impact on the planet or face hefty fines and operational bans. Britain and the Netherlands do not have such laws, but they're frequently cracking down on greenwashing claims by fast fashion brands. Meanwhile, in the US, New York has proposed the Fashion Act. If passed, it will demand that big clothing companies disclose their supply chains. So labor abuses, greenhouse gases, and chemical use won't remain hidden. So far, the West seems to be leading the charge. Yes, the regulatory changes will be felt across the world, like improved labor conditions and lower pollution levels, but other key players cannot be missing in action, like the global powerhouse of fashion production, which is Asia. Because if not curtailed, fast fashion will only get faster and destroy our world at greater speed. Our last story tonight is about a vast icy landscape, the Arctic, the northernmost region of the Earth. It is a floating pan of ice where polar bears feast, reindeers and foxes roam, and waters teem with seals. Beneath the surface, more animals depend on the Arctic underside. Now, this is a delicate ecosystem and it needs the ice. But for decades now, the Arctic has been in a death spiral. The world is warming up, so is the Arctic, and the situation is much worse there. The Arctic is warming faster than almost anywhere else on the planet, at 2 or 3 times the global rate. Its ice has been melting rapidly since 1978. Now time is running out. The white Arctic is turning blue faster than expected. Now a new study is out. It says the Arctic will be completely ice-free in just about a decade. By 2035, the summer sea ice on the Arctic Ocean could disappear entirely, in which case the Arctic would be mostly water. Now, this is alarming on many levels. You see, the Arctic is a multi-dimensional space. Its surface, the area beneath it, the air above, the water around it, all of this serves a purpose. All of it depends on ice. So when the ice melts, all of it is affected. Animals will lose their homes, their habitats will melt away, and you know what comes next. We start losing the animals in large numbers. The harm extends to humans as well. Sea ice reduces the effect of ocean waves on coasts. Without the ice, waves will be stronger and bigger. They will cause more erosion. People living on the coast will suffer the most, but so will others the world over. When permafrost thaws, it releases 2 potent greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and methane. This further heats up the planet at a faster pace. This will cause more extreme weather events, especially in North America, Europe and Asia. Remember the searing heat wave last year that left America and Europe sizzling? Or the catastrophic floods in Pakistan from the year before. Such events will increase in likelihood, and they will be much harsher. plus melting permafrost could unlock the next pandemic. Viruses and bacteria could reawaken, infect local wildlife and prompt a disease spillover. If you think this is too far-fetched, think again, because this has happened before. And this is only the tip of the iceberg, yet some are finding opportunities in this crisis. Because the Arctic region has abundant mineral deposits. It has oil and gas reserves. Melting ice means they're more accessible by ship, and countries want to take advantage of it. And speaking of taking advantage, of course, China is leading the pack. It is heavily investing in the Northern Sea route. It will go over the top of Russia and give China clear access to the Arctic. It will also boost maritime trade. Shipping time between China and Europe will go down by 15 days. Canadian and Scandinavian countries are interested as well. They're hoping for more shipping routes to open up. Meanwhile, the US is keen too. The region is contentious for America. Greenland has a wealth of gold, zinc, iron and uranium. In 2019, Donald Trump wanted to buy it from Denmark. And last year, the Biden administration approved a huge oil drilling project in Alaska, despite widespread opposition. So the Arctic is clearly enjoying political relevance, but not in the way one would hope. 90% of its melting is because of human-caused heating, because of fossil fuel emissions from oil, gas and coal, yet countries are busy finding a silver lining here. Instead of scrambling to save the ice, that's what they're doing. Sure, some progress has been made. Like last year, the COP28 climate summit was held in Dubai, and for the first time ever, nearly 200 nations and regions approved a global pact. They agreed to transition away from fossil fuels, to quit adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere by mid-century. One can only hope that they stick to their promises, or the Arctic as we know it will soon be frozen only in memory.